Welcome to the Bank Tellers, where we speak to senior leaders across the banking industry and beyond, all over the world. Today, I am Scarlettt Sieber. I am your Chief Strategy and Growth Officer here at Money 2020. And today, I am super excited because I get to have a longtime friend in Phill Rosen, who is the global CTO of MoneyLion, which is great because we look at things globally, and you are the global CTO, not just CTO. So, Phill, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So can you give us, if people have been living under a rock, can you give us a brief introduction of who MoneyLion is?
Sure. So, MoneyLion is a neobank, right? We have a consumer application that has pretty much every major consumer financial service product somebody could need inside of it, plus a marketplace of third-party financial service products. We also have a business called Engine, which was formerly Even Financial, which is the company I started. And Engine is an enterprise B2B platform that enables financial services marketplaces via embeddable components or APIs. And the two businesses combine together to really enable great marketplace experiences for our enterprise clients, but also bring the best possible products to the consumer inside of our neobank. So the consumer knows that when they come to MoneyLion, it's not that we're pitching our product, we're always pitching the product that is exactly right for that consumer, even if it's a competitor.
This is a rapid fire question. You said, the slew of financial products, consumer financial products. Which one's your favorite that you have?
MoneyLion has probably the best earned wage access product. It's an interest-free cash advance for consumers that is really awesome. We do many billions of dollars a year in that. But on top of that, we offer credit building, managed investing, active investing, crypto trading, cash management accounts, and then some insurance products are coming online. I think we're currently going to be supporting about 70 different product types inside the MoneyLion ecosystem today. So it's a massive slate, really something for everyone.
When we met 10 years ago, I actually went and looked. It's been almost 9 years. Mm-hmm. There was this whole thing of unbundling of a bank, and now it's all coming back together and rebundling. When you think about, I'd love to hear whether it be from the MoneyLion perspective, which I know is a bit newer, but we can even go to Even. When you think about the history and the trajectory of where you're at now, what would you say is one of the most defining moments in your company's growth?
So, I think the combination of MoneyLion and Engine really sort of represents a big inflection point, not just for the company, but for the industry. Because it was the combination of sort of the unbundling motion with the neobank motion to bring about something that was totally new and differentiated. I wouldn't say that we're really going through a true rebundling phase, right? It's not like MoneyLion is going to go and offer every single consumer financial service product a consumer could need. That's way too much work, and we wouldn't be the best at those things. Instead, we're seeing the bundling action being more like pulling together a bunch of different products from third parties, whoever can do it best, and adding those within our brands such that the consumer is always getting exactly what they need. And I think that is a trend that we're seeing across the industry. It's certainly one we saw prior to the acquisition when I was at Even, was a big portion of our business was fintech companies leveraging Even Financial to embed marketplaces, to diversify and offer products that they simply weren't equipped to do. We've also seen some of those fintech companies, especially in the lending space, try and bring more first-party products to market. Some of the lenders have added savings accounts and become banks. Others have tried to expand through marketplaces or white label. But one of the pitfalls of BaaS was how hard it was to actually operate those products on a purely white labeled basis, right? There's a certain amount you can do through the BaaS solutions to really sort of get to your own first party product, but it's not truly first party. And at a certain point, if you want to be truly comprehensive, you end up going to the marketplace approach. And I think that's starting to play out in the ecosystem in terms of how data and sort of like seamless user experience is impacting those marketplaces. Because what we're seeing is all of this sort of data consortiums and intermediaries start to work with the fintechs to figure out how to activate that data even with inside marketplace or embedded solutions, so that even if it's not a first-party white labeled product, you have a first-party seamless experience, right? Where the consumer can do everything really inside that one touch point and not have to go to 2 or 3 different, brands, experiences, moments to actually complete acquisition of that product. And so I think that's really something that's accelerating a lot right now. It's something we're working on quite hard with a lot of our data partners, and I think others are too.
I feel excited that in 2024 that we're talking about data, and the first word wasn't AI right away. So that's a win for today, especially coming from a CTO. But I'm sure that you'll talk about that at some point in time as well. When you think about MoneyLion's secret sauce, you talked about the cash advances, you talked about all of the slew of products that you have. What is it really that makes MoneyLion unique in your eyes?
It's the fact that we aren't trying to prioritize and force our own products down our customers' throats, right? Our goal is really to achieve consumer impact that helps them achieve whatever their goals are, whether it's their credit score or their savings or paying down debt or purchasing a home. And we truly are indifferent as to whether or not it's us or somebody else in the market who does that. And I don't think there's really anyone else in financial services who's fully committed to that idea, right? That it's the customer need that comes first as opposed to the company's product that comes first.
I think that's a soundbite right there that we needed. No, but it is true because we at Money 2020 sit often at the intersection of all of these different companies. And back to my banking life when I was a reformed banker, a lot of the conversations that were happening behind closed doors with leadership was around owning the customer and who actually owns the customer. And there was a lot of not necessarily skepticism, but more reluctance around partnering with these third parties because we wanted to be the ones who were owning that customer from beginning to end. So it's definitely a different model.
And we've seen the evolution of it. I think when I was starting even in 2015, it was only a handful of sort of the really early online lenders who were thinking about taking their product outside of their experience, right, and sort of giving up a degree of control. That rapidly evolved with on lending, and within 2 or 3 years, everybody was doing it. Everybody had APIs. But if you went to the banks and said, hey, can I get an API to do the same thing with credit cards, right, they might have built the API. In fact, I talked to some credit card companies who had APIs, but there were executives who were refusing to let anybody use those APIs because the idea of relinquishing any degree of control was just terrifying to them. But I think consumer expectation has shifted so dramatically, and the consumers expect to be able to have a very seamless access to their financial service products that they need wherever they are, that the banks don't really have a choice anymore, right? If you don't do that, you are going to lose those customers entirely, right? You have to meet that need. So I think that has happened in fintech. I think everyone sort of gets that idea to an extent now. And I'd say that the really forward-thinking banks have started to accept that and are engaging in it. And it won't be long before they all go there. The principal constraints on that are going to be solving the regulatory hurdles, right, that come about from that. But I'd also say that fintech has spent so much time thinking about regulation, even though it scares all of us. I think we're, as an industry, well equipped to deal with that.
Absolutely. Now, as I said to you, I'm an ex-banker, and I did also have the title of Chief Innovation Officer. So when we talk to banks, we like to talk about innovation. Now, if you think about MoneyLion, though, you were one of the disruptors that changed this whole game. So I don't want to use the word innovation because it's a little too corporate. But you, Phill, when you're sitting with Dee and the rest of the leadership team, how are you thinking about advancing and being better versions of yourself utilizing technology?
So one of the funny things is, my partners at MoneyLion are reformed bankers, right? Dee comes from, big banking. And I think that, like some of the other people who come from that background, they were frustrated with what they saw there, at the same time saw the massive opportunity to be had, right? If they sort of were first and leaned into bringing about change, even if it's a little riskier, be first, bring change, and you'll be rewarded. So I think they leaned really hard into that. As we think about sort of what comes next, it's funny. I don't think what we're working on is innovative in terms of an idea. I think it's innovative in terms of we'll finally be able to realize a bunch of innovative ideas that were only dreams and actually see them materialize and sort of cohere together finally over the next couple of years. Like all of the ideas that we're working on were in some form or another present in the, even before I started and I think a lot of others had them. But the ecosystem wasn't ready for it. The sort of the service providers, data providers, and infrastructure providers weren't able to meet the needs of developing that. I don't think the consumers were necessarily ready in a place to trust these companies to do it, right? To really handle all this data and sort of put the financial service products outside of the bank branch. And all of those things have sort of changed now, such that all of the pieces are in place like Legos that can be assembled together. And so what we're really seeing happen right now is this acceleration of actually delivering on that promise and making it real. I think it's a common theme in tech in general, where, and you see it with things like crypto and AI, where there's all this promise, all this big ideas, and there's sort of a gold rush. And then after that gold rush, there's sort of a disappointment. As over the first few years, none of the promises were fulfilled, because actually the devil's in the details, and working all of that out might take a long time to actually see through. Well, it's been about 10 years of fintech now. And I think we are past the point of the gold rush. We're past the point of the disappointment. And now we're in a very practical mode where, all of this stuff is a possible reality to act on.
That makes a lot of sense, and we got to AI, so the word came out. We still went back to data, but I think...
Well, it was a criticism of AI, by the way.
Yes, which is different, right? So, but when you are sitting there and we're looking at budget season, as the global CTO, what is your strategy as it relates to investing in technology? Is there specific applications or things that you're looking at and you're thinking about?
It's assembly. Like my biggest work is about assembling all of these different Legos that are now inside the company and in the ecosystem into a really great seamless consumer experience that truly meets the needs of the customer in hitting not just their needs today, but their needs tomorrow, right? And there are a lot of pieces to that. And going back to AI is a part of that, right? There are ways that AI can certainly help on the education process, the search process, right? Sort of the advice, alert, monitoring, customer service, all of that. But it's just one of the building blocks. And in some ways, it's one of the most immature, right? Because it's sort of the newest. There are real applications where we're using it, right? And it's working well inside the app. You can search for a financial service topic or ask a question and get Gen AI responses that are contextualized by your personal information, right? So it's not just like, hey, what's a credit score? Well, a credit score is something that companies use to judge your credit worthiness. It's like, oh, here's your credit score. Here's how you can actually tangibly take steps to improve it. Here are the specific products that you should actually consider using to do that, right? And so I think that's sort of where this concept of Legos comes into place. AI is great, but if you can't also pull it together with the real actions and solutions that somebody needs that is specifically personalized to them, it's kind of useless.
I love that we keep talking about Legos. As a mom of two small boys, I actually saw a hilarious meme on Instagram about if you invested in Legos that the return would be higher than putting it into the stock market, because I can attest to that because I have Legos all over my floor. So when you think about the concept of the building blocks and the Legos, I totally hear you on investing in the assembly of that. Obviously, Even was acquired by MoneyLion, but when you think about that piece, how do you differentiate when you're going to build that yourself versus partnering with someone else? What's your build by partner strategy?
So I think for a lot of our tech, we have a predisposition to build. That's partially my background. Originally as a software engineer, I'm inclined to build. I think a lot of the things we want to do not have good off-the-shelf solutions. So the buying question is really more about, generalized cloud infrastructure that can facilitate the development of something bespoke that we're doing in-house. I think there are places where there are probably some, especially in compliance, where there are off-the-shelf solutions that are probably better bought. But for most of the things that come down to consumer experience and getting them the best solution, much of that needs to be bespoke in my experience. And so that's where we lean. It's been interesting over the past year. There certainly have been some turmoil in fintech as some of the companies haven't made it or have been struggling. So, we've evaluated certain opportunities there. There were some that were interesting. But in many cases, it's things that, we might be better served building in-house and really bringing our expertise to exactly what we need to bear.
Very helpful. We're going to shift to Phill the human.
Cool.
Okay. So when you think about your engineering background and beyond, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Well, a lot of it actually comes down to what I learned for fundraising when I was getting started in startups, which is to really, make sure that you incentivize the industry to make you successful. It's a lot easier to raise money and get the business going if at the outset, all of the major players in the industry really feel like they need you to get that done. There's a lot of ways to incentivize them to want to see you be successful, but I think that was really important and not something I was inclined to do naturally on my own, as I'm just not a salesperson, and that's not how I think.
If you were to give advice to someone who had aspirations to be the next global CTO of MoneyLion, what would you say?
Well, I think I'm in a little bit of a unique place as CTO of MoneyLion because I am probably more hands-on on the engineering side than I think a lot of CTOs at traditional banks are. So my path to get there was a mixture of being somebody who built and somebody who was also a CEO. So that was a unique path that, in addition to hard work took a lot of luck and good timing. I think to be the sort of CTO who gets to be hands-on as well as have sort of strategic impact on the business, it would definitely be helpful to start a company and run it, not just be the software engineer, but really figure out how do you translate technology into business impact. I think that's something that a lot of engineers are potentially missing.
You have such a unique background, obviously, with the deep tech, but also being CEO. This is going to be a little bit of a curveball. What was the part of being acquired by MoneyLion that surprised you the most?
Well, the process of an acquisition was surprisingly exhausting. I actually ended up being hospitalized briefly as a result of it. I got seizures. I was so exhausted and stressed out. So that was surprising. I didn't realize just how hard bankers work to get those deals through. But then I think after the deal, I was actually really excited to relinquish a lot of the CEO responsibilities and focus more on, the building the business in terms of the product and the tech. I don't think I understood until I was CEO just how much of the portfolio they deal with is basically the most painful stuff that the business has to see on a day-to-day basis, and that you don't get to deal with the fun stuff nearly as much as others. So making that transition was surprisingly exciting and enjoyable for me.
If you had to pick one priority that MoneyLion would focus on for the next 12 months, what would it be?
I would say it's continuing to build best-in-class data infrastructure. I don't mean AI, although AI is certainly a consequence or an output of that. But I think so many of the most important opportunities that fintechs have today to deliver value to the customer comes down to really making your data accessible and actionable to all the different tools that you want to build. Very often I see inside companies that the data is siloed, the architecture hasn't been thought through such they can really be activated and used to deliver value to the consumer, and that's often the biggest pain point. So I think getting that right is really one of the biggest technical opportunities we have. And something that I plan on putting a ton of focus onto. And if you do that right, then AI applications become easy.
Data silos is a real thing, and I think most of us can relate to having that as a challenge. Now we're going to do another level of Phill and real rapid fire here. If you were not in fintech, what would you be doing?
So I kind of always wanted to work in the defense industry, and the defense contracting side of things. I don't have the expertise or the education for it, but I'm interested in it.
I know some people. We can make that happen still. It's never too late. Describe your leadership style in 3 words.
3 words is hard. Well, is that more than 3? No, I'm not going to describe it in 3. My leadership style is to basically try and find people who know much more than I do, who are much better experts than I am, and then give them the opportunity to be successful.
You talked about regulation a bit earlier. If there was one regulation that you believe would significantly improve, or policy that would significantly improve banking for the future, what would it be?
I don't know how to craft the policy correctly, but I think attempting to structure regulations such that there was more of a positive opportunity for companies to use data to help consumers. a lot of the policy is centered around restricting data usage, which is fine, necessary very often, but I don't think enough focus is given to what are the opportunities to make this data helpful to customers, improve their financial outcomes and the trajectory of their life. Because I think very often it can be a real force for good. And a lot of the time that doesn't happen because the regulation is centered on, well, you can't do this, so then no one does that. And then, sure, you prohibit some of the negative outcomes, but you prevent a lot of the positive outcomes too. So trying to figure out how to rebalance that a little bit, I think, would be a real positive for everyone.
When Phill wakes up in the morning, what's the first app that you check?
Slack.
Always Slack.
Always Slack. We have a large amount of engineering in Asia. So they're online. Some of them are online at 9 a.m. our time, 9 p.m. their time. So I'm trying to get an hour of overlap with them.
There you go. How many messages do you have when you open Slack in the morning?
I don't know. It's a wall of white threads.
There you go.
Yeah.
I feel that one.
Yeah.
If you have the collective ecosystem of money listening, if there's one ask for them from you or from MoneyLion, your choice, what would it be?
Well, I think the whole industry should be asking itself, how can we work together to deliver better consumer outcomes? Be a little more outward looking and focus on the partnership opportunities to bring value to consumers. That means really over the long term, improving their financial health and letting them hit their objectives. So trying to get to that collaborative vision, I think, would be a really great thing to improve on.
Collaboration for the win.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Phill. That is it for this episode of The Bank Tellers. Until next time, appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.